Aquarius Sun and Rising. Welcome to your May 2022 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So May has a concentration of energy or a significant energy in the sign of Aries, even though the Sun has already gone into Taurus as the month begins. So the Sun is in a fellow fixed sign, which is coming before you, or after you, I should say. And so this is your fourth house of home and family, where a lot of this activity will take place. But of course, the sign before Taurus is Aries. And Aries is where you're going to have some significant transits as well, because on the second of the month, Venus goes into Aries. And so this will be the third house, and it'll be the house of communication. And these two houses that I'm referring to, where there are multiple transits, namely Aries and Taurus, the third and fourth houses for you, can be houses connected to your family of origin. The third house can be your siblings, your brothers and sisters, and it can be cousins, aunts and uncles, extended family members. The fourth house can be your mother. Some people say the father. I just say the parents and the family of origin as a whole, as well as your childhood. So the history of your family and the experiences that you have had. So in that particular house, as I record this, it is right before the new moon in Taurus. So that's a major transit that is hitting that fourth house of home and family. So it's not out of the question that some Aquarius people are going to move. It might not be on the 30th of April or even a couple of days after that. It might be a couple of months after that. Maybe it'll be 6 months. There are different ideas about how long the eclipse energy or window is active for. Those kinds of things I don't really concern myself about. I am interested in the actual date because I feel like when something is on a date that it is significant, even though you might be able to have experiences transpire before then, I still think that the date itself matters. And so that's what I go by. But it doesn't mean that, everybody's going to experience it at that time. It's just the general idea of these things coming into play. Now, it might only be that you happen to make that decision that you want a new home. So the point is that you're going to have a lunar eclipse in Taurus in November. So this may start the ball rolling for you to kind of get used to the idea that this is something you actually want to do. Because Aquarius is a very strange sign. You're very unpredictable, and you're very out of the box, but you're also a fixed sign. So you can tend to have some of the same tendencies as a sign like Taurus, which is the sign notorious for being stubborn. Aquarius, Leo, and Scorpio can also have those same qualities. But Taurus is the one that always gets the the shade when it comes to being stubborn. So, the idea of moving might be the last thing that you would ever think of doing. And then you have this epiphany. You realize that, you just want a change of pace. And that's another thing. I always think of Aquarius as a sign that is changeable, which is ridiculous. I don't know why I always thought that. I think it's the unpredictability factor. Is that even a word, unpredictability? Unpredictable factor that made me think that it was changeable, but really it's not so much that. It's just kind of doing things suddenly, I guess you would call it. So let's go back to the beginning of the month when Venus goes into Aries on the 2nd. So that will be that third house. And aside from siblings and other family members, the third house can be your local area. It can be neighbors, which is kind of funny because Venus can bring harmony there. So if you are having any kind of weirdness with neighbors, that might subside a little bit, and that to me would make you less likely to move. Not, you know, having bad relationships with neighbors is a catalyst for moving. But it's also the area that has to do with learning things and teaching things to others, especially if they're of a practical nature. So this could be a time to pick up money as a tutor. If you are in the educational field, that might be a time when you're getting a job. Of course, it's at the end of the school year, at least in the United States. It usually ends in May or the early June, so maybe it's getting a an offer for a job for next fall. I don't know. But the other thing, too, is if you're a writer or any kind of other thing that you're doing for communication, definitely that could be making that money. It's funny because April was the time when this was in 2016. This was like almost a year after I started doing astrological readings on YouTube. I finally monetized. And that was a whole different period. You know, those of you who are, have a YouTube channel now, it might be a lot different than it was then. Those were the gravy train years. But someone said, oh, you don't make any money doing monetizing your videos. And so I, like a fool, I believed them, and I didn't do it for like 11 months. And at that time, people weren't monetizing. Around 2016, it wasn't that commonplace. Then everybody started doing it, and then I didn't feel so weird, or about 2015, I should say. Everybody started monetizing, and then, it was like no big deal. But that's the third house, is that social media. So if you have launched anything that is connected to the internet, you might start to see financial gains from that. So even if it's something very small, it can build. If you have a website and you're getting a little bit of whatever monetization gains, or YouTube or some other way, or like blogs, if you're just from writing and stuff like that, you can gain from that, and that might even encourage you more so, because actually on the 10th Jupiter goes into this area. So I do urge any Aquarius people who are writers to keep that in mind if that's something that you feel called upon to do, is that this may be a good time for you to be delving into that, because you may see financial gain from it. Venus and Jupiter can indicate that. And Jupiter is going to be in Aries for most of this year, but it is going to go back into Pisces for a little bit of time. And then in 2023, continue in Aries. It will go into Taurus, though, but I'm not going to get into that. No need for that. And then on the same day that Jupiter goes into Aries on the 10th, Mercury goes retrograde. So that's kind of interesting. 4 degrees of Gemini, fellow air sign, and the air sign in front of you. So that's going to be the 5th house. And that is going to be something to do. Gosh, it's funny because I could have sworn that this, I hope I didn't screw that up. Oh no. I was thinking of another sign that I did. I think it was Capricorn. And I was saying about the Mercury retrograde, but they had it back when it goes into Taurus, because it is going to go back into Taurus too. So I thought maybe I was doing a reading twice. But yeah, so it's going to begin in your fifth house of romance, love, creativity. So one big way that this can show up is an ex-lover contacting you. Maybe you feel the urge to contact an ex-lover. I say lover because that sounds like doesn't that sound like a cheesy 70s movie? But the the fifth house is not necessarily a committed relationship. It can be dating, it can be casual sex, affairs, that kind of thing, and maybe somewhere in between. And so somebody may contact you, and you may, based on the situation you had with that person, you may be happy to hear from them or not. But in any case, that's going to happen. And then Mercury's going to go back into Taurus on the 22nd of the month and stay there for the rest of the month until June 3rd, when it goes direct. So when it goes back into your fourth house, that can be something to do with childhood. And it's very interesting because the fifth house has a connection to childhood too. One thing I didn't say to you about the fifth house is that's the house of children. So an Aquarius person may be thinking perhaps about having children, and maybe you had it all set that you were going to do it, and then you thought about how it was when you were growing up. That something happens because, like I said, you're having this other stuff going on that's dealing with the fourth house. The sun is there, and I'm sure there's something else going on in that fourth house. Well, what's going on in the fourth house for you is Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus. And, oh yes, the solar eclipse. I was like, I know I was talking about something with the fourth house. Yeah, so that might be, something can happen around the time of the eclipse that's kind of like a wake-up call to you that makes you really think about everything that the plans that you've laid out, Aquarius, that has a domestic side to it. So look for revelations about your childhood. Something coming into light. Maybe that was, and it might be something that comes out. It's funny because I want to think that would be more like a lunar eclipse. And you will have one of those in this area later on this year. So maybe that would be more of the case because that's a full moon, and that can bring, it's a powerful full moon, and that can bring secrets out in the open. But I feel like with the solar eclipse, there can sometimes be a similar thing, but it's not so much a secret that's been kind of in the background. It's like an aha moment, perhaps. I don't know. But something to do with your childhood and connected for some of you with having your own children. So this may be, maybe you had your mind set that you were going to do it, and something has made you rethink that. And because your siblings could be involved as well, that could be all connected. That you're thinking about the dynamics, the family dynamics, and not so sure that it's a good idea because you realize that there are certain patterns that have not been fully severed or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Aquarius as a sign probably has more than a few misgivings about going that conventional route. Not to say that Aquarius people don't have children. That's ridiculous, but they do. But it can be more of a sacrifice than maybe for a Cancer person or a Taurus person. It's not something that is, just accepted easily, because the fire and air signs are masculine signs, and they tend to have more commitment issues because they're more geared towards the outer world than that insular family kind of environment. And so it can feel kind of limiting, suffocating if it's not done properly, in other words. And so anyway, that's very, very interesting. We'll see what happens along those lines. And even something to do with love and family and childhood as well. If an ex-lover contacts you and you realize that you want a real relationship, you may connect the dots and say, the reason that I always kind of like have these affairs is because I'm afraid of intimacy. And the reason I'm afraid of intimacy is because of, X, Y, and Z, this thing that happened. And you can feel this sense of like, yeah, now I get it. I understand why I did things like that. So, on the 16th of the month, there's going to be a lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio. Well, there's another fixed sign. And that's going to be the fixed sign before you. So that's the angular house, the 10th house of career. That can be incredible for you, Aquarius. This can really put you on the map. If you have, a full moon, which pales in comparison to a lunar eclipse, can be about recognition. So you can imagine the power of several full moons, what that can bring. And this type of thing, the 10th house can be fame. So if you are in the entertainment field, practice signing your autograph. Well, I'm half joking because that's not a common, profession, I guess. But anything that has to do with making a name for yourself, because this is your public reputation, can be featured here. Another thing, too, is that if you're retiring, this could be the grand finale. Maybe you're going to get your retirement dinner, and everybody's going to send you off into the sunset or something like that. And it's really good for someone who wants to change professions but is clinging to the known quantity, because it can help you to let go of things. This is going to be engaged. Oh no, this is not going to be. Forget I'm not even going to finish that sentence. But anytime we have a full moon, let alone a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, it's always intense. So there can be even things, the father can be the 10th house. So that might be some kind of understanding or something coming out about him that affects you at a deep level. On the 20th, we have the sun going into Gemini. So that's a friendly angle. That's coming, that 5th house. And that's really fun. That's when all the fun begins. Because when you have a lot going on in the 4th house, it's a water house, and it's bogging you down with emotions. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to be more detached, and you want to have a good time. So that's the 5th house. It's about pleasure. It's about romance, creativity, hobbies, anything that you do when you're not working. And the sun is a ruler of the fifth house. So the sun takes to the fifth house like a duck to water. On the 24th, Mars goes into Aries, so yet another planet going into that third house. Now, Mars isn't as congenial as Venus or as happy-go-lucky as Jupiter. And therefore, there could be a fly in the ointment. There could be something that becomes a conflict. But it could be courage. Maybe you need to confront a sibling and you have the backbone to do it at this time. And if there's any kind of thing going on with a parent, if there's, maybe this is something that is already in play, that a parent has passed away and you're dealing with inheritance issues and the house, the property itself, fourth house, that can be the property. There might be something that you need to stand your ground, and maybe you need to get assertive about it, because if you have a sibling that is not playing fairly or something like that. But like I said, you have these two benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter there, so that might kind of cancel out the combative tendency of Mars and make it, and just kind of make it mellow enough for you to have a backbone, but not necessarily be aggressive or fighting. On the 28th, we have Venus going into Taurus, and that's that fourth house. And that can be a financial gain from real estate, money from the mother, harmony with the mother, seeing eye to eye, good things, beautifying one's home. And remember that Mercury is there too, so that can be contracts, renegotiations, and things of that nature. On the 30th, we have the new moon at 9 degrees Gemini in that fifth house. Oh, and the thing is, too, that because this new moon is happening while there's a Mercury retrograde, and because Mercury went retrograde in Gemini, look to the middle of June when Mercury comes out of its shadow officially around the 17th or 18th of the month, or I think it's maybe even 19th. And that will be a time when you can see things that might have been new beginnings but still had some delays, everything snapping back into action. That has to do with that fifth house, whether it's some kind of love interest or creative project. The business that you own can be the fifth house as well. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.